The grand mansion of the Levingstons glittered under the evening lights, its walls echoing wealth and elegance. Yet beneath that shine, something dark lingered, something only one person had begun to suspect. Her name was Miriam, the maid no one noticed, the quiet shadow who cleaned the marble floors and polished the mirrors that reflected everyone's lies. Miriam had been working in the Levingston mansion for barely 3 months when she started noticing things. The billionaire, Mr. Arthur Levingston, calm, polite, and too trusting, had a habit of eating whatever his beautiful wife, Celeste, prepared for him. Their dinners were lavish, candlelit affairs, yet something about Celeste's gaze unsettled Miriam. It wasn't love. It was calculation, the look of someone waiting for something to happen. One evening, Miriam was dusting near the dining room door when she overheard them. Celeste's voice was sweet as honey, but laced with irritation. "You're still trusting that new maid too much, Arthur," she said sharply. Arthur chuckled. "You worry too much, my love. She's harmless." Miriam froze. There was silence, then the faint clink of a glass. Celeste sighed and replied, "Just remember, dear, not everyone in this house deserves your trust." That night, Miriam saw Celeste in the kitchen long after the chef had left. The mansion was quiet, the lights dimmed, but the smell of something bitter filled the air. Celeste was stirring a pot of soup, her movements slow, deliberate. She added something from a small silver vial, her eyes darting toward the doorway as if afraid of being caught. Miriam stepped back into the shadows, heart racing. The next morning, Arthur was cheerful as ever, ready for his usual breakfast prepared by his wife. But Miriam couldn't shake what she had seen. She watched Celeste pour the tea, her manicured fingers steady, her smile poised. "Good morning, Miriam," Celeste said, glancing up. "Would you like to taste the tea before I serve it?" It was a test. Miriam knew it. "No, ma'am," she replied softly. "That's for Mr. Levingston." When Celeste turned away, Miriam caught a whiff of something faint, metallic. Fear twisted inside her. That evening, the billionaire sat down for dinner once again. The table glittered with silver and crystal. Miriam, standing near the corner, could barely breathe as Celeste set down a plate of creamy stew before him. Miriam stepped forward before she could stop herself. "Sir," she said quietly, "please don't eat that." The room went still. Arthur looked up, startled. Celeste's smile froze mid-expression, her eyes sharp as blades. "What did you just say?" Celeste's voice was soft, dangerous. I'm sorry, ma'am," Miriam stammered, "but I saw something last night. I don't think it's safe." Celeste's expression changed instantly. She laughed, sweetly, almost pitying. "Oh, poor thing," she said. "You've misunderstood. Arthur, you mustn't listen to her. She's confused, probably frightened by the dark." But Arthur was watching Miriam closely now. "What did you see?" he asked. Miriam swallowed hard. "I saw her mixing something into your food, sir, from a small vial." The room pulsed with silence. Celeste's face turned pale for just a second before she recovered. "Arthur," she said gently, "this is absurd. You know how servants can be superstitious, dramatic." But Arthur didn't respond. He stood up, took the plate, and called for the head chef. "Take this to the lab in the main office," he ordered. "Have it tested immediately." Celeste's eyes widened. "Arthur, that's ridiculous." He turned to her slowly. "If you've nothing to hide, then there's no problem, right?" She didn't answer. The following morning, Arthur sat in his study, waiting. The phone rang, and when he answered, the voice on the other end trembled slightly. "Sir, the stew contained a toxic substance, traces of digitalis. It could cause heart failure if taken in a large dose." Arthur's world tilted. His hand trembled as he set the phone down. From the corner of his eye, he saw Celeste standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable. "I can explain," she began, her tone soft, almost calm. "Explain what?" Arthur's voice was low. "Were you planning to kill me?" Her lips quivered, but her eyes glinted cold. "Kill you?" "No, Arthur. I was freeing myself." Miriam, standing quietly by the hallway, watched as the billionaire stared at his wife, a woman he thought he knew. Celeste took a step forward, voice trembling between fury and despair. You ruined me long before this. Do you think I didn't know about your other life? Your secret accounts? Your deals with people who would destroy us if they could? I wasn't trying to kill you, Arthur. I was trying to protect what was left of me. Arthur's voice broke through the air like thunder. By poisoning me? Tears rolled down her face, but Miriam noticed something chilling. They weren't real. Before Arthur could respond, Celeste turned toward Miriam. You've done enough damage, she hissed. Do you think he'll thank you for this? You're nothing but a maid, a disposable shadow. But Arthur stepped between them, his voice steady and filled with quiet rage. She saved my life. You destroyed the trust one built my world on. Security arrived moments later. Celeste didn't resist as they led her away, though her gaze lingered on Arthur like a curse. You'll regret this, she whispered, because the truth, the full truth, hasn't come out yet. Arthur stood motionless as the door closed behind her. Miriam hesitated, unsure she should leave. Sir, she said softly, I'm sorry for speaking out of place. I just couldn't let. He interrupted gently. You did what no one else would. You saw what I refused to see. He walked to the window, his reflection merging with the glass. A man who had everything, yet nearly lost it all to the person he trusted most. But deep down, something about Celeste's final words haunted him. The truth hasn't come out yet. That night, long after everyone had gone to bed, Arthur went to his private office, the one only he and Celeste had access to. He turned on the desk lamp and pulled out a hidden drawer. Inside were stacks of documents, accounts, and letters. One envelope sat at the top, sealed with Celeste's initials. He hesitated before opening it, and what he read made his blood run cold. It was a confession, but not the one he expected. It spoke of another man, someone from Arthur's business circle, someone who had been quietly transferring money into offshore accounts under Celeste's name, someone who wanted Arthur gone and had used Celeste as a perfect scapegoat. Arthur's hand trembled as he reached for his phone to call the authorities. But before he could dial, he heard a faint creak at the door. Someone else was in the mansion, and when he turned, the shadows moved. Arthur's heartbeat thundered in his ears as the faint creak echoed through the dimly lit study. The mansion was supposed to be asleep. Security stationed at every entry, staff retired to their quarters, silence blanketing the halls like a heavy fog. But the sound was unmistakable. Someone was moving inside. He quickly slipped the letter back into the drawer, his mind racing. Was it Celeste? Impossible. She'd been taken away hours ago. Then who? He stepped quietly to the corner, his instinct sharp, eyes fixed on the door handle as it turned ever so slightly. The door inched open, and a shadow glided in, tall, deliberate, dressed in black. Arthur didn't speak. He reached for the old brass paperweight on his desk, his grip tightening as the figure entered fully. The intruder moved with a calm precision that sent chills down Arthur's spine. Whoever this was, they weren't here by mistake. Mr. Livingston, the man said, voice smooth, low, familiar. You really should have stayed quiet. Arthur recognized that voice instantly. Raymond Clark, his longtime associate, the man he once trusted with his company's deepest dealings. The man whose name appeared over and over in the documents Celeste had left behind. Arthur's voice was cold. You were behind this. Raymond smiled faintly, stepping into the light. His expression was confident, too confident. Behind what? Your wife's poor judgment? I only gave her a little push, made sure her desperation worked in my favor. He tilted his head, eyes glinting. You always thought she was your weakness. Turns out she was my weapon. Arthur clenched his jaw. You used her to poison me. I didn't use her, Raymond replied casually, moving closer to the desk. I gave her an option. Either she helped me, or she lost everything. You'd already locked her out of the company funds. Arthur. She was furious. All I did was channel that rage into something productive. Arthur's mind reeled. The betrayal wasn't just from Celeste. It ran deeper, rooted in greed and manipulation that had been festering for years. You wanted the company, he murmured. I want what you stole, Raymond corrected, his tone sharpening. You built your empire on deals that weren't entirely yours, didn't you? You think people don't remember? You buried a lot of secrets. Arthur, I'm just here to dig them up. Miriam, who had been returning to the study to deliver fresh linen she'd forgotten earlier, froze outside the half-open door. She could hear everything. Her heart pounded as she peeked through the gap, eyes wide. Inside, Raymond had pulled a small pistol from his coat pocket. "Now, I'm not unreasonable," he said softly. "You signed the transfer papers I prepared. Everything under my control. And maybe you live long enough to start over quietly somewhere far away. Refuse!" He raised the gun slightly. "And you disappear. Like so many others who got in the way." Arthur didn't flinch. He was staring at the man he once called a brother, a man who had eaten at his table, celebrated his triumphs, pretended loyalty while weaving deceit. "Celeste warned me once," Arthur said bitterly. "She said my biggest enemy wasn't outside the house. It was sitting beside me." "Smart woman," Raymond replied, smirking. "Too bad she was too emotional to survive in our world." That sentence snapped something inside Arthur. Before Raymond could react, Arthur lunged, knocking the paperweight against his wrist. The gun fired, a deafening blast, but missed, shattering the glass cabinet behind them. Papers flew everywhere. Raymond stumbled back, cursing, but Arthur was relentless. They struggled, the gun skidding across the floor. Miriam gasped, covering her mouth as she watched the two men fight. Raymond swung hard, landing a punch on Arthur's jaw, sending him reeling against the desk. Arthur's head throbbed, but he didn't stop. He grabbed Raymond by the collar, slamming him into the bookshelf. Books tumbled, glass cracked, but Raymond shoved him off, breathing hard. "You should have just taken the offer." Raymond snarled, "And let you destroy everything I built." Arthur shot back, "Never." They both dug for the gun. Miriam's heart raced. She didn't think. She just moved. She slipped into the room, ducked under the desk, and grabbed the pistol before either man could reach it. "Stop," she cried, her voice trembling but strong. Both men froze. "Miriam, put it down," Arthur said quickly, breathing heavily. "It's dangerous." "Listen to him," Raymond said smoothly. "Try to regain control. You don't understand what's happening here." "I understand enough," she said, tears glistening in her eyes. "You're both fighting over greed, and people are dying because of it." Raymond took a careful step forward, palms raised. "Be smart, girl. You think he's innocent? Ask him where his fortune came from. Ask him about the people he buried to get where he is." Arthur's face hardened. "Don't listen to him, Miriam. He's twisting the truth." But Miriam hesitated. Her loyalty had always been pure. Yet now she saw two men, both with secrets, both capable of terrible things. Her mind spun. Who was truly innocent? Before she could decide, Raymond lunged again. The gun fired once more, the echo ringing through the study like thunder. Raymond collapsed against the desk, clutching his shoulder, groaning in pain. Arthur quickly kicked the gun away, breathing heavily. Miriam stood frozen, her hands shaking. "I didn't mean—" Arthur caught her before she fell. "It's over," he whispered. "You did what you had to do." But as Raymond lay on the ground, bleeding but conscious, he began to laugh, a dark, broken laugh that chilled the air. "You think it's over?" he rasped. "You think this ends with me?" Arthur frowned. "What are you talking about?" Raymond's eyes glimmered with a cruel light. Celeste wasn't working alone. Arthur's pulse spiked. "What do you mean?" "She wasn't supposed to poison you," Raymond hissed. "She was supposed to stall you. Someone else, someone higher, gave the real order." Arthur knelt beside him. "Who?" Raymond coughed, blood on his lips. "Find the name in the offshore account. The one labeled AR. Holdings. You'll see who you've really been doing business with." Arthur's breath caught. That name, it wasn't one he recognized immediately, but something about it felt disturbingly familiar. Before he could press further, Raymond's eyes fluttered shut, his body going limp as the security guards burst through the door. The next hours passed in a blur of flashing lights, sirens, and chaos. Paramedics rushed Raymond away, and the police swarmed the mansion. Statements were taken, evidence collected, and Miriam, shaken and pale, sat beside Arthur in the cold silence that followed. As dawn crept through the curtains, Arthur stared at the crumpled letter Celeste had left behind, then at the blood-stained rug. Nothing made sense anymore. He thought of the offshore account, A.R. Holdings, who was behind it, and how deep did this conspiracy go? Miriam, he said quietly, his voice hoarse, you saved my life again, but I need one more favor. She looked up, still trembling. What is it, sir? I need you to help me find out who's really behind all this. Miriam hesitated, fear flickering in her eyes. Sir, it's dangerous. If that man was telling the truth. Arthur interrupted, his gaze firm, haunted. Then we're already in danger. Both of us. Outside, the morning sun rose over Levingston Mansion, but its light felt cold, hollow. The world believed the nightmare had ended, but inside those marble walls, Arthur knew it was only beginning. Because somewhere, someone far more powerful than Raymond Clark had orchestrated everything, and their next move had already begun. The mansion had become a battlefield of silence, its beauty stained with betrayal. Days had passed since that night of blood and truth, yet the echoes of it still lived in Arthur's mind. The wound of deception ran deep, deeper than he ever imagined. Celeste was gone, Raymond was in custody, and yet the shadows of their lives lingered. Every document, every whisper of AR Holdings, pointed to something much larger, a secret so deeply buried that even Arthur's billions couldn't protect him from it. Miriam, though frightened, had refused to leave. She stayed because something inside her said it wasn't over. She had seen Arthur's eyes, the kind of eyes that had lost everything yet still burned with the need for truth. And deep down, she couldn't let him fight alone. She had witnessed too much, risked too much, to walk away now. One evening, as the last embers of sunset kissed the glass walls of the mansion, Arthur sat in his study, surrounded by files and endless trails of numbers. Offshore accounts, coded transactions, ghost companies. He stared at the name again, A.R. Holdings. The initials twisted something inside him. They weren't random. They felt familiar, intimate. And then it struck him, A.R. Arthur Raymond. He froze. Could it be? No, it couldn't. He had never created such an account. But what if someone had used his name? What if this entire web was designed to lead back to him? A knock broke the silence. Miriam entered quietly, holding a cup of tea. You haven't slept again, she said softly. Arthur barely looked up. I can't, he murmured. If what Raymond said is true, then this thing, it's far bigger than my marriage or my company. Someone wanted me destroyed from the inside out. Miriam set the cup down and leaned closer. Maybe the answer isn't in the files, she said. Maybe it's in the people. Her words sank deep. He looked at her, realization dawning slowly. People, he whispered. You might be right. He rose abruptly, moving toward the old chest in the corner of his office, the one Celeste had forbidden him to open years ago. The lock clicked open. Inside were personal ledgers, old partnership contracts, letters, and a stack of photographs. In one of them, Arthur stood beside Raymond and another man, a face he hadn't seen in over a decade. His former mentor, Alistair Rowan. Arthur's pulse quickened. A.R. Alistair Rowan, his first investor. The man who had once funded his dream, and then vanished after a scandal 20 years ago. The same man who had sworn revenge when Arthur pulled out a deal that cost millions. Arthur's hands trembled as the pieces finally began to align. It was him all along, he whispered. He used Raymond. He manipulated Celeste. He built everything to look like my doing, because he wanted me to fall the way he did. Miriam stared at the photo, her breath catching. Do you think he's still alive? Arthur nodded slowly. Not just alive. Watching. Within days, Arthur's suspicions were confirmed. His private investigator, one of the few people he still trusted, sent a message. Alistair Rowan had resurfaced in Dubai under a false identity, running a shell corporation that connected directly to AR Holdings. Every thread led back to him. The man Arthur once admired had built an empire out of vengeance. Arthur made his decision. He would go to him, not with anger, but with the truth. The journey took him far from the marble luxury of his home to a world of glass towers and golden deserts. Miriam insisted on accompanying him. Despite the danger, "You'll need someone who still believes in you," she said, her voice steady but full of quiet fire. They arrived at a private estate, guarded and gleaming like a fortress. When Arthur entered, the years melted away. Sitting at the head of a long marble table was Alistair Rowan, older, colder, his silver hair glinting like a blade. His smile was that of a man who had already won. "Arthur," Alistair greeted, his voice deep and sharp. "After all these years, I was wondering when you'd find your way to me." Arthur stood tall. Why go this far?" Alistair leaned back, eyes gleaming. "Because you stole my life. You took my company, my name, my legacy. You built your fortune on my downfall. So I did what you taught me. I turned pain into profit. I turned your own wife into my ally, your partner into my pawn, and your empire into my puppet." Arthur's fists clenched, but he forced himself to stay calm. "You destroyed lives to prove a point." "I rebuilt mine from ashes," Alistair replied, standing now, his voice swelling with bitter pride. "You called yourself a visionary, but you were just a thief who believed in luck. I believe in control." Arthur's gaze hardened. "Then control this." He pulled a flash drive from his pocket, the evidence he collected, linking Alistair to every forged document, every illegal transfer, every false trail. "Everything you've done is recorded here. It's over, Alistair." The older man laughed, slow and deliberate. "You think that matters? The world already sees you as guilty. Your name is tainted. By the time you clear it, there will be nothing left." But Arthur only smiled faintly. "Then maybe it's time the world knows the truth, from both sides." He placed a small recorder on the table. "This conversation is being broadcast live to the media." For the first time, Alistair's expression cracked. "You wouldn't dare." "I just did," Arthur interrupted. "And now, you'll answer to the same world you tried to control." Chaos erupted. Alistair lunged forward, but security, already alerted, stormed in. The old man's reign ended not with violence, but with silence. His empire crumbled within hours, his accounts frozen, his name dragged into the same abyss he once wished for Arthur. When it was over, Arthur stood on the balcony overlooking the city. The desert wind brushed against him, heavy with the scent of dust and redemption. Miriam joined him quietly, her eyes reflecting the glow of the distant skyline. "You did it," she whispered. Arthur shook his head slowly. "No, we did it. You gave me something no amount of money could buy: perspective." Miriam looked down, her voice soft. "I just did what was right." He turned to her then, truly seeing her, not as a maid, not as an employee, but as the only person who had seen to the lives when everyone else was blinded by wealth. "Sometimes," he said, "the smallest voice saves the loudest world." In the months that followed, Arthur sold most of his companies, donating large portions of his wealth to rebuild communities and fund hospitals, the kind of places people like Miriam came from. The mansion that once symbolized luxury now became a shelter for those who had nowhere else to go. Celeste, though imprisoned, sent him a letter months later, a confession filled with remorse. She had been manipulated, broken, and driven by fear. Arthur read it in silence, his anger finally fading. Some wounds, he realized, were better left as scars, reminders, not punishments. And Miriam? She stayed not as a maid, but as the director of his new foundation. Her quiet strength had become the soul of Arthur's new purpose. Where once there was pride, now there was peace. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, Arthur stood by the garden fountain, the sound of water mingling with the rustle of leaves. Miriam approached, her steps light. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked gently. Arthur smiled faintly. "Regret what?" "Trusting people," she said. He thought for a long moment, then looked at her. "If I hadn't trusted, I wouldn't have been betrayed. But if I hadn't been betrayed, I would have never known who was truly worth trusting." She smiled, a small, knowing smile that carried the weight of everything they'd endured. The night deepened around them, but the mansion, once filled with secrets and sorrow, now glowed with the quiet light of redemption. The story that began with poison ended with purpose. The man who once ruled through power now lived through humility. And somewhere beyond the stars, fate whispered its final irony, that sometimes the poorest soul saves the richest heart. But even as peace settled over the Levingston mansion, a small envelope arrived at Arthur's desk weeks later, with no name, no return address. Only 2 words written in elegant script, not finished. Arthur looked out the window, the wind rustling through the trees. Somewhere, deep inside, he felt it. The storm wasn't gone. It was only waiting for its moment to rise again.